Imagine being able to see inside your entire body, your brain, your heart, even your spine, without a single incision. That's the power of a full body MRI scan.
Celebrities like Kim Kardashian have jumped on the wave of support of a new kind of preventative care. It comes with a hefty price tag.
Unlike CT scans, MRIs don't use ionizing radiation. Instead, they use powerful magnets and radio waves to create stunningly detailed images of your organs, blood vessels, and soft tissues. It sounds like a dream, the future of preventative medicine. Surely this is a win, right? Wrong. Behind the glossy marketing, celebrity endorsements, and high-tech promises lies a truth most doctors already know, that these scans can easily cross the line from evidence-based medicine to marketing.
I am considering offering full body scans here at Sacred Heart. What do you think?
I think showing perfectly healthy people every harmless imperfection in their body just to scare them into taking invasive and often pointless tests is an unholy sin.
On the surface, it sounds obvious, right? Take the test, find the cancer, remove it, and you're cured. Why wouldn't you do it? Ever since the Kardashians started posting about it, a lot of people have been talking about full body MRIs and getting them. It's seductive because the principle behind it seems solid. Early detection of something like cancer should logically save lives by catching it before it spreads. We already do this with certain cancers, for instance pap smears for cervical cancer, colonoscopy for bowel cancer, and CT scans of the chest for lung cancer. But unlike a full body MRI for a perfectly healthy, low-risk person, those tests are targeted at people with specific risk factors, and they've been studied extensively and proven to save lives. Many other screening tests haven't shown any benefit, and that list includes full body MRIs. On the contrary, it can even cause a lot of harm. But how can that be? The first problem with full body MRIs is what we call false positives. The promise behind these scans is that they can pick up abnormalities, and that gives the impression that results can be clearly labeled normal and abnormal. But biology rarely works like that. There's always a huge gray area. Even the most reliable test becomes unhelpful when you apply it to everyone without selection. Statistically, that's because most people are healthy. Disease is rare, so your pre-test probability of finding something serious like cancer is already very low. That means even if the test finds something abnormal, there's a high chance it's a false positive, especially in young, healthy individuals. Let's go through a hypothetical scenario to make this make more sense. Say you're told you've tested positive for breast cancer. Sounds scary, right? But what if I told you that even with a 90% accurate test, the chance you may have cancer can still be tiny? Imagine a hypothetical group of 1,000 women. About 1%, so approximately 10 women actually have breast cancer. The other 990 do not. Now, our hypothetical test is 90% accurate, so it's right 90% of the time. So, out of the 10 women who do have cancer, 9 will test positive and 1 will test negative. But of the 990 women who don't have cancer, 99 will still test positive, false alarms, while 891 will test negative. That means there are 108 positive tests in total, but only 9 are real. So if you test positive, there's only about an 8% chance you truly have breast cancer in this hypothetical scenario. This is called the base rate fallacy, where we forget how rare something is in the first place. And this is exactly why in clinical practice, we don't just test everyone. There needs to be a reason, a high index of clinical suspicion before we scan. Otherwise, we end up misinterpreting results, over testing, and falling prey to base rate fallacy, thinking about how accurate the test is without considering how common the disease we are testing is. A test that's even 99% accurate can still produce far more false positives than true positives if you use it on the general population for a disease that affects a small number of people. But what if I told you that isn't even the real issue? The real problem is something we call incidentalomas, random findings that show up on scans, a blob, a spot, a lumpy thing. Believe it or not, most of us are walking around with tiny anatomical quirks or harmless abnormalities, and that's perfectly normal. But if you start scanning everyone, you are going to find them. A 2020 systematic review and meta-analysis looked at over 6,000 full-body MRIs across 12 studies. 95% of people had at least one abnormal finding. Around 30% needed further investigations, and yet only 0.5% were suspicious for cancer. And that's the crux of the problem. While 91% of findings are benign, nearly 1 in 3 people ends up being told they might have something serious, and then they are sent for repeat scans, follow-ups, or even biopsies that carry their own risks. In trying to find disease, we are often creating it through over-testing and unnecessary procedures. Even if you do find cancer on one of these scans, there's another major problem. Something called length bias. As a rule, screening tends to pick up slow-growing, less aggressive cancers simply because they've been around for years. They're easy to find, not because the scan is brilliant, but because these cancers were never going anywhere fast. Which begs a very important question. Was that ever going to cause harm anyway? Meanwhile, the truly aggressive cancers, the fast-growing ones, often develop and spread between scans. They're unlikely to be caught by routine screening in time to make a real difference. So even when full-body MRIs do find cancer, it's often the least important kind, giving the illusion of success without actually saving lives.
Okay, now the thing they don't really get is that we have no idea what's the ratio of these things it's finding.
Yeah.
And it's probably, we have lots of reasons to suspect it's finding so many more overdiagnosed tumors than it is finding the critical ones. And we know that from data in mammography, where there's this huge surplus in how many cancers are found after mammography was deployed. We know that from autopsy data of older men, where so many men die with prostate cancer, not from prostate cancer.
Yeah.
We know that like some organs like thyroid glands are notorious for lots of people have papillary thyroid cancer. That's not going to do anything. The more you scan, the more you find that, the more you remove thyroids, you're not changing mortality. This is the South Korean experience. And so I think the tech people just don't understand that cancer is what the pathologist says it looks like under the microscope, but that doesn't tell you the destiny of what was going to happen to that tumor. And these scans will find masses and they'll find cancer that you're glad you cut out, but maybe you're worse off by having cut it out.
To see how this plays out in real life, let's see what happened in South Korea. And it all started with thyroid ultrasounds. In the late 1990s, a government-funded cancer screening initiative encouraged people to get ultrasound scans of their thyroid as part of routine checkups. The intention is good. Find cancer early, save lives. But what happened next was shocking. In 1999, South Korea recorded around 6 cases of thyroid cancer per 100,000 people. By 2009, that number had jumped to nearly 48 per 100,000, more than a 7-fold increase. On the surface, it looked like an epidemic, but when researchers dug into the data, they realized something important. People weren't just suddenly developing more cancer, doctors were just finding more of it. The widespread use of ultrasound meant tiny, harmless thyroid nodules that had always been there were now being labeled as cancer. As such, surgeries skyrocketed from around 1,000 a year in 2001 to 11,000 a year by 2012. These surgeries have real risks. For instance, during thyroid surgery, the laryngeal nerve can be damaged, causing issues with speech and swallowing. And as always, there's the risk of infection and bleeding. And one would assume that surely these surgeries would lead to a benefit, perhaps a reduced risk of dying from thyroid cancer. Unfortunately not. Survival didn't change because most of these cancers were indolent, so slow growing that they would have never caused harm. The blue line in this graph shows the incidence of thyroid cancer, and the red line shows mortality. As you can see, the mortality basically stayed the same. This is the danger of overdiagnosis, when finding more disease doesn't mean better health, and often the exact opposite because we end up over-investigating and causing more harm. And thyroid nodules are just one example. What about lung nodules?
And it's often a chain reaction. I'll see something in your lung, I'll do a lung biopsy, that causes your lung to collapse, then I need to put in a tube to re-expand it, then the tube causes an infection, and the antibiotics I give you cause a severe allergic reaction. Of course, the biopsy results come back when you're in the ICU, and the good news is it's benign, but the bad news is none of this had to happen.
At the end of the day, it's not that MRI scans are bad. It's that using them without reason can cause more harm than good. If you're healthy and low risk, scanning your entire body isn't prevention, it's noise. And medicine works best when it's targeted, evidence-backed, and led by context, not curiosity. Sometimes the most powerful decision is not doing anything at all.